straight ahead on Law and Crime Daily. Law and Crime Network is in the courtroom for day one of Ghislaine Maxwell's trial. We bring you the latest from federal court. And cell phone video captures the shooting death of a Texas man. But was it murder or self-defense? Plus, Elizabeth Holmes takes the stand in her own defense. Why the Therano CEO says she used pharmaceutical company logos without permission. And later, opening statements begin in New Hampshire, where a man is accused of killing his wife for a life insurance payout. Law and Crime Daily covering court cases from coast to coast. Welcome everyone to Law and Crime Daily. I'm Brian Buckmeyer along with Terry Austin. A jury is seated and opening statements have begun in the highly anticipated trial of Ghislaine Maxwell. The one-time socialite faces multiple charges stemming from a relationship with a longtime companion and financial heavyweight, Jeffrey Epstein. The 59-year-old is charged with conspiracy to entice minors to engage in illegal sex acts and transportation of a minor to engage in an illegal sex act. Federal prosecutors say Maxwell helped Epstein groom girls as young as 14 for sexual abuse and sometimes participated. In opening statements, prosecutors said Maxwell was a predator who, quote, helped normalize abusive sexual conduct and served up girls to Epstein. Maxwell's defense team said in its opening statement, the memory of victims have been contaminated by faded memories and media reports, and called Maxwell a scapegoat for Epstein. In 2019, Epstein was arrested on federal charges of sex trafficking. Just months after his arrest, Epstein was found dead by suicide. Maxwell pled not guilty to all charges. Joining us today is criminal defense attorney BernardaVillalona and Terry Austin. Bernarda, faded memories and Maxwell as a scapegoat. Comment on the strength of the defense's opening statement so far.
So the defense attorney in the opening statement was opening for about an hour long. Her focus in the opening statement was to put out this theme, this narrative that all these women that are coming in to testify, these four complainants, that they are in it for the money. In fact, she detailed how each one of these four got an enormous amount of money and even got more money because they cooperated with the government. I believe one of the Jane Does actually got $5 million. Another Jane Doe got $3.5 million. There's a Jane Doe that, aside from money, she is seeking assistance from the government to help her gain citizenship here in the United States. But the whole focus of the opening statement is to try to kill the credibility, the believability of the alleged complainants in this indictment. Because according to the defense, there is no corroboration, there are no eyewitnesses, there are no video, so there's nothing to corroborate their faded memories.
Interesting concept for the defense there. Now, Terry, you've reviewed the indictment in this case. How difficult do you think it will be for the prosecution to prove these charges?
You know, Brian, this is not going to be a slam dunk for the prosecution. There are 6 counts, 4 victims. There's the conspiracy to entice minors to travel and then actually enticing them to travel, the conspiracy to transport the minors and then actually transporting those minors. And what they have to show here is that Ghislaine Maxwell herself, nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein, but she herself recruited and groomed those minor victims. And so it's going to be probably corroborated with forensic evidence. You're going to have to show that she made phone calls, she booked those travel tickets, not just that she was involved, but she was intimately involved. And I think if they can do that and they can bolster that with the alleged victim's testimony.
Interesting. There's definitely a lot of smoke in this case. I guess for the prosecution, they got to prove that where there's smoke, there's also fire. We'll see how that plays out. Looking ahead, jury selection begins Tuesday in the trial of former Minnesota police officer Kim Potter, charged in the shooting death of Daunte Wright. Potter faces first and second-degree manslaughter charges. Last April, police were trying to take Wright, a 20-year-old black man, into custody when Potter pulled her gun and shot him in the chest. Potter claimed she meant to pull a taser instead of the gun. Wright died. His death caused unrest across Brooklyn Center, Minnesota, and into Minneapolis. The Minnesota governor later declared a state of emergency. Potter and then Brooklyn Center Police Chief Tim Gannon resigned from their positions days after the shooting. The Law and Crime Network will bring you gavel-to-gavel coverage of the trial, beginning with jury selection. Opening statements are set for December 8th. Still ahead on Law and Crime Daily, the prosecution rests after nearly 30 witnesses. Now, disgraced CEO Elizabeth Holmes takes a stand in her own defense as she fights charges of wire fraud. But first, confrontation caught on camera. Cell phone video shows the moments before a man was shot to death during a clash over child visitation. All that and more after this. Welcome back to Law and Crime Daily. The Attorney General's office in Texas is investigating the shooting death of a man during a confrontation over child visitation. The whole thing was caught on camera. Law and Crime's Angela Levy is here with the video.
Brian, Kyle Carruth shot and killed Chad Redd on November 5th in Lubbock County, and we want to warn you, some people may find the following video disturbing. Now, the confrontation was at Kyle Carruth's home. He is the man in the black shirt. Chad Redd is the man in the aqua-colored shirt. Redd went to the home to pick up his son for a visit, and a confrontation between Redd and Carruth ensued. Carruth is the boyfriend of Redd's ex, who can also be seen in the video. Redd's wife, Jennifer, recorded what happened on her cell phone.
Call the police. Call the police. Call 911. Call 911. Call 911. Call 911. Call 911. Call 911. I have it on video, Kyle. You did it, not him.
I told all of y'all to leave.
We came to get his son.
He's not here.
She should have told that. She should have told that.
Now, the district attorney in Lubbock County, Texas, actually asked the Texas Attorney General's office to handle this case because Kyle Carruth's estranged wife is a judge in Lubbock County. An attorney for Kyle Carruth told a Texas TV station that his client acted in self-defense. To date, no charges have been filed. Brian?
Thanks, Anjanette. Let's bring back criminal defense attorney Bernarda-Villalona and Terry Austin. Terry, Carruth is claiming self-defense. Does this look like self-defense to you, though?
Brian, this does not look like self-defense to me. Carruth went back into the house to get his gun. They were verbally threatening each other, but Carruth was really not in any sort of danger. And under Texas law, he has to reasonably believe the force was imminently necessary to protect against like an unlawful entry there, that being his home. But if you look carefully at that video, he had opportunities just to back away, and it did not look like anyone was threatening him or someone was going to attack him or go into the house. So I don't think it looks like self-defense. I think it was an argument that got out of hand and that, in fact, Carruth was the one who provoked the entire incident.
Now, Bernarda, we know the castle doctrine in Texas is very strong, but let's throw in one fact to see if that changes anything. If Redd had a court order to see his child and Carruth was stopping him from seeing his child, does that change anything in terms of self-defense?
I don't think it changes anything in terms of self-defense because the video speaks for itself. Just like Terry said, this was no confrontation in terms of that you fear for imminent death or serious bodily injury. Here it just seems that he wanted to puff up his chest and show who's the boss. So I hope that whoever's looking at this can take that into account. The problem we have here is that, when it comes to Texas laws and the duty to retreat, it kind of doesn't work in the favor of the deceased in this case.
All right, well, and Jeanette, is there anything more to this video in this confrontation?
Well, actually, Brian, there is another video that the attorney for Kyle Carruth has released to a TV station in Texas, and it shows the view from the front porch. So you're seeing kind of a reverse of what we just watched. And he says that backs up the claim of self-defense. Now, I've reached out to that attorney for a comment and to request that video. Right now, though, the attorney has not returned my calls and my emails.
All right, we'll see how we get that next video, because that'll be interesting to seeing the other angle, because at least in this video, it appears that when Carruth does shoot at Reed, that there may be some distance between the two of them. The question here is Reed advancing on Carruth? Is he retreating? That could also add into the factors as to whether or not deadly force should have been used. Thank you very much for that, Anjanette. We'll hopefully get that video in soon and we can bring you back in to dissect. And of course, Terry and Bernarda, always a pleasure. Thank you very much. And on to a case that's gripped the nation from the start. We could soon learn if actor Jussie Smollett was actually attacked or if his January 2019 assault was staged to promote his career. Jury selection began Monday in the trial of the former Empire star. Smollett claims he was the victim of an attack near his Chicago apartment nearly 3 years ago. Smollett reported 2 men put a noose around his neck and poured an unknown liquid on him while yelling racial and homophobic slurs. The case was initially investigated as a hate crime, but police later said the actor paid 2 brothers from the TV show he worked on to stage the attack for publicity. 2 months later, the 39-year-old was indicted on more than a dozen felony disorderly conduct counts for filing a false police report. Those charges were later dropped. Last year, Smollett was indicted on 6 other counts relating to the incident. The actor continually denies he planned the attack. Smollett's charges carry a max sentence of 3 years in prison. A judge ruled no cameras are being allowed in the courtroom for the duration of the trial. Coming up on Law and Crime Daily, we head to New England, where the trial begins for a man accused of strangling his wife while his children slept in the other room. Plus, Elizabeth Holmes takes a stand in her own trial as a former businesswoman defends herself against nearly a dozen counts of criminal fraud. More on that next. Welcome back to Law and Crime Daily. After 11 weeks in federal court, the jury finally hears from the defendant, Elizabeth Holmes. Last week, the former Therano CEO took the stand in her own defense. Monday marked the 4th day of testimony for Holmes, who faces 11 counts of fraud for her time with a now defunct blood testing company. Last week, Holmes admitted she added pharmaceutical company logos like Pfizer or Schering-Plough to Theranos' validation reports she sent out to investors. Holmes testified that companies never authorized Theranos to use the logos, but Holmes says she used them anyways because Theranos had worked alongside the companies in the past. Ahead of Holmes' testimony, investors told the jury they believe the pharmaceutical companies themselves sent over the paperwork. Further investor testimony showed Holmes touted a Theranos partnership with the U.S. Department of Defense, some saying Holmes told them the Edison device was used in military helicopters overseas. Prosecutors say these claims are false, though Holmes later testified military doctors had discussed the device's use for burn victim treatment. If convicted, Holmes could face up to 20 years in prison. Let's bring back criminal defense attorney BernardaVillalona and co-host Terry Austin. Terry, Elizabeth Holmes took the stand to tell her story. Do you think that will help or work in her favor?
You know, Brian, actually, I do think it's going to help her case. Oftentimes, you don't want to put your defendant on the stand, but she is naturally very charismatic. She's able to connect with the members of the jury, and she wants to tell her side of the story. And I think she can explain what her thought process was during this whole ordeal. She can explain her fears, she can explain her concerns, why she made the decisions that she made. And remember, there are 5 women on this jury, and I think that is going to have an impact. They're going to relate to Holmes, and sometimes I think they're going to understand that women are subjected to harsher scrutiny. So I think all in all, it was a very calculated move to put Elizabeth Holmes on the stand, but I actually think it was a good move for the defense.
It's an interesting turn and calculated move because, Bernard, that's what I want to ask you about. What do you think of the trial strategy by the defense as to having Holmes admit to some of the small wrongs, such as the labels, but not to the major wrongs like fraud?
Exactly. So for the defense, what they try to do is that they're minimizing their loss. They're minimizing her exposure. So what they're going to end up arguing, doing closing arguments, is like, look, she admitted to what she did was wrong. She was honest about her wrongdoings. And because she was honest about those wrongdoings, that is what you should probably find her guilty of, but not of the higher counts or the other counts that she's denying, because she came to you and she gave you the good, the bad, and the ugly.
It's interesting. It's almost like some defenses where we see defense attorneys will come out and say, yes, what my client did was wrong, maybe questionably wrong, maybe morally wrong. And to Terry's point, there are more stricter oversight on some people in the tech community, especially young women. But the defense could come out and say what she did may have been wrong, but not criminal. That would be interesting closing arguments to hear. But of course, federal court, we can't bring the cameras or bring you into the court through the cameras. So we'll bring the court to you with our expert legal analysis. Thank you again, Bernarda and Terry. When we come back, the latest details on the trial of a man charged in the murder of his wife. Opening statements are given in William Argy's New Hampshire trial. Welcome back to Law and Crime Daily. A jury considers the fate of convicted cop killer Markeith Lloyd. On Monday, Lloyd returned to the courtroom for sentencing. Last month, a jury found Lloyd guilty of first-degree murder in the shooting death of Orlando Police Lieutenant Deborah Clayton. Lloyd shot and killed Clayton while she was trying to arrest him for killing his pregnant ex-girlfriend a month earlier. He was already serving life in prison for his ex-girlfriend's murder, but now faces the death penalty. In the days following the trial, the judge decided the jurors could know that an officer kicked Lloyd in the face, which caused him to lose an eye. This later brought into question Orlando Police Department's use of force. The same jury that convicted Lloyd will now hear from witnesses on why he should or should not be sentenced to death. The sentencing process is expected to take several days. Money and hate, that's the motive prosecutors say Bill Argy had for the 2019 murder of his wife. On Monday, his trial began. Prosecutors say the 46-year-old New Hampshire man killed his wife, Maureen, by either strangling or smothering her. She was 39 years old. Argy was the only beneficiary of his wife's $400,000 life insurance policy. Prosecutors say Argy lost his job as a physician's assistant and accumulated mounting debt as a gambling addict. They say Argy asked a friend to help kill his wife, and when he declined, Argy asked for help hiring a hitman. Authorities say Argy killed his wife, then tried to die by suicide after he threw away his cell phone and gambled at a casino. During opening statements, the defense claimed Argy did not kill his wife, but that he found her in bed with a sheet tied around her neck. On the stand, Argy's friend told jurors he had mentioned a plan to kill his wife in the past.
For about how long had the defendant expressed dissatisfaction with his marriage to Maureen to you? About
3, 4, 5 years.
Did the defendant also, in conversations with you, talk about killing his wife, Maureen?
He did.
And about when did those conversations occur in relation to the intervention in March of 2018?
In the year or two prior to that.
What did the defendant say to you in those conversations that you remember, killing his wife?
He basically, part of the conversation was, all right, Bill, you're gonna go down to South. Maureen's not gonna go. She's gonna take half of everything. So you're gonna make twice as much money, but you're gonna write a check right back to Maureen up here. And he didn't want to hear any of that.
And with respect to killing his wife, what would he say about that?
Again, he said, I'll do it, or I'll hire somebody.
During cross-examination, the same friend told defense attorneys Argy was out of control and intervention was staged. He later said he checked in with Argy's wife, who said everything was okay.
What was the primary concern being talked about for Bill?
Well, his gambling, his infidelity, there was a variety of his drinking. He was out of control.
So gambling, so it's addiction.
Yeah.
And you also, at times when he was with you, he threatened to commit suicide himself.
Yep.
When you were at the intervention, did you say anything about his threats to so-called kill anyone?
No, this was about helping Bill.
Did anything that they tell you lead you to believe, or how they were acting lead you to believe that there's anything wrong?
She was uncomfortable. She didn't talk very much at the wedding. She kind of said everything was okay.
Bernarda, in a case with so much circumstantial evidence that Argy wanted his wife dead, what fact sticks out to you the most that helps the prosecution?
Well, aside from this witness who testified that the husband actually tried to enlist him to do the killing or even hire a hitman, that sticks out to me. But also what sticks out to me is that Maureen called 911 just days prior to make sure that the emergency line was working just in case.
Yeah, that's I don't mean to laugh, but as a defense attorney, I don't know how you get from underneath that. Of course, we'll keep watching. But Terry, the defense is claiming that the suicide attempt and the gambling are evidence of innocence, not guilt. Does that make sense to you?
Brian, that makes no sense to me. To me, a suicide attempt, and most people would interpret it this way, is a sign of consciousness of guilt. And the gambling, to me, means that you have no remorse if you're doing that after the wife has died. So I think the defense is trying to deal with the facts as they've been presented to the defense. And she's interpreting these incidents and making that interpretation work to their advantage to show that the defendant really somehow was innocent of all of this. It's really hard to understand how someone can kill their spouse, especially if the children are in the house. But it seems like it happened. It seems like the facts are stacked against this defendant. And frankly, I definitely think that the defense attorney is doing the best she can with the facts in this case and trying to argue that it all points to innocence. And the fact that there's this financial gain has nothing to do with anything.
Yeah, as a defense attorney, if there are circumstantial facts or evidence in the case, they've got to kind of bend that to their side as best as they can. But of course, we'll keep following this case and giving you updates. Thank you both. And thank you for joining us here on Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.